You said that this restaurant has done this before. Why don't you tell us the name of the restaurant if it's already known? Look at all these comments asking for the restaurant, and she has not responded to any of them. If you really are trying to give us a warning, why don't you tell us what it is? What's up, guys? This is Alan again, and I just saw this video, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm pretty furious. The restaurant industry already is struggling so hard right now, and we do not need any more misinformation that's gonna damage our reputations even more. So, let's take a look at this video, and you make the call on whether or not I have the right to be pretty mad.
I was just stood up on a date and it was the most humiliating experience ever. Story time, met this guy on a dating app and he immediately asked me out on a date to a specific restaurant. He confirmed day of, I get to the restaurant and see that he's nowhere to be found. So I reach out, no response. I check the app and notice that he unmatched me. At that point, I was a little confused and I was kind of pissed because I was already dressed and I got all the way there. And because I had put in so much effort, I thought I might as well just have a meal while I am in the building. And it wasn't until I got home when I was scrolling Facebook and I saw a very similar story from a girl at that same restaurant who also got stood up. She found out that there are restaurants now posing as people on dating apps, just so you go to their business, and once you get stood up, they know that probably 9 times out of 10 that you're gonna buy something from them. And that just blew my mind. The fact that we have stooped this low. Sirens, jail time, jail for all the people at the restaurants thinking they're marketing geniuses. You are not no girl boss town. You are just ruining a girl's mental self-esteem. I can't even believe, I'm going to insert the screenshots below so you can see, but what a wild ride, right?
Okay, so that was a video, and if you see how tense I got just by rewatching this, as a person who worked in restaurants for over 10 years, let's watch this video again, and I'll break each claim that she has made, because I believe that this story is completely made up.
Met this guy on a dating app and he immediately asked me out on a date to a specific restaurant. He confirmed day of, I get to the restaurant and see that he's nowhere to be found. So I reach out, no response.
Okay, let's take it. First, did she get this person's number, or did this person set up the date through the app? That's one way to tell if this was a bot to begin with. Second, she says that they confirmed the date and she showed up at the restaurant. Who made the reservations? Did she make the reservations, or did this person make the reservation? If this date proposed this restaurant, I'm going to assume that this person also made the reservations, because if I proposed a restaurant for my date, I wouldn't expect my date to set up the reservation. And the first thing I would do if somebody else set up the reservations for me is I would go up to the host and ask them, excuse me, do you have a table for Mr. So-and-so? The host looks at the thing, oh yes, right over here. Or, no, I don't see anyone by that name. And in that case, you could be like, okay, red flag, I'm out of here. No reservations made under that name. She could have saved herself, assuming this is true, which is not. Assuming this is true, if the person didn't make the reservations, then I would have just went home, or I would be like, hey, I'm at the restaurant now. They said that your name is not on the reservation. If this story was true, the first thing that she would have done is to talk to the host and to see if there was a table waiting for her. And this would have saved her this whole mess. Then, of course, this story is not true, because a logical person would have checked out for the reservations before they waited and bought dinner for themselves.
Confirmed day of, I get to the restaurant and see that he's nowhere to be found. So I reach out, no response. I check the app and notice that he unmatched me.
Okay, so he unmatched you. So just go home.
At that point, I was a little confused and I was kind of pissed because I was already dressed and I got all the way there. And because I had put in so much effort, I thought I might as well just have a meal while I am in the building.
So you're telling me you sat at a table, which I'm assuming, because if you're going to have a date, I'm pretty sure you're going to make reservations. One, to make sure that there's seating available, because if you sat at the bar, there's no guarantee that the bar is not full. And of course, you have to also make sure that there's 2 seats available at the bar for this date to even work. Based on my experience, people do not set up their dates without making reservations because you don't want to show up all dressed up just to show up at the restaurant that doesn't have any extra tables for you. So of course you're going to make a reservation for a date. There's one thing to meet up for drinks, but this is clearly a dinner date. So it would be dumb to not make reservations and get seats secured.
I got home when I was scrolling Facebook and I saw a very similar story from a girl at that same restaurant who also got stood up. She found out that there are restaurants now posing as people on dating apps just so you go to their business, and once you get stood up, they know that probably 9 times out of 10 that you're going to buy something from them.
9 out of 10 times. Really? You're telling me there's some statistician that got enough data to confirm that 90% of the times people who get stood up stay there for dinner? I have never seen that once in my entire life. Like entire meals. We're talking about the courses, sitting on a table and dining by themselves. 9 out of 10 times. Based on what? How do you even quantify that? Like, where do you get this data from? I have not even seen this happen once. Never even heard of this happening once. And she said that there's enough data that somebody concluded that this happens 90% of the time.
They know that probably 9 times out of 10 that you're going to buy something from them. And that just blew my mind.
Yeah, it blows my mind too, because it's not true. And you tell me that 90%. It's not even like 50% or 40%. Even at 10%, I will be dumbfounded if that was true. You're telling me that 90%, a person who gets stood up stays at the restaurant? I've seen people get stood up. I've been stood up. I just go home. I'm not gonna stay there. Okay, let's say she got stood up and she decides to be a solo diner. I've been a solo diner myself, but she didn't decide to go to this place. The guy decided to choose this date. When I go to a restaurant to be a solo diner, I kind of already have heard things about this place. It's not like I just walk into a restaurant and decide to get a whole meal by myself. Like, it still has to be planned. As she stated, she did not make the decision to go to this restaurant. And the other thing I want to point out is that she found out this restaurant has done this before. Okay, if this is the case, then what's the name of this place? How come she won't tell us the name of this restaurant if this restaurant has done this more than once?
The fact that we have stooped this low. Sirens, jail time, jail for all the people at the restaurants thinking they're marketing genius.
No, you stooped this low to get the likes. This is a made-up story to get the likes. They stoop so low to attack an industry that's already suffering just to get views, just to go viral, and for what? Okay, don't waste your time with this one, ladies. He'll confirm a date and not show up. First time, thought it was a valid excuse, but I'm sure 99% he sent me a photo of a car accident from online saying that's what happened. So gave a second chance. Stood up after confirming plans, and then he went. Okay, let's look at this. So she got stood up once. If this was a robot or a catfish, what was the purpose of faking this first flake? Because that will decrease the chance that this second chance would even happen. So you're telling me that someone from this restaurant hired somebody to do this, to create this, like, a low percentage chance of getting a date, because the more you flake, even if it's not his fault, the less likely it would be to have this date even happen. Because as we heard her say herself, this restaurant hired this person to catfish her to go to that restaurant, to trick her to buying this full meal for herself with a 90% success rate. What was the purpose of that first date being flaked for this fake car accident? Apparently there are restaurants creating bots on dating. So is it a bot or a catfish? Because bots don't tell you to go to a real place. Having dates show up and there is really no person, and then you'll end up getting a drink or eating at the place. LOL, I think is quite genius, but rude. Maybe a drink at the bar, but not at the dining table. Let's look how unreasonable this is. If I was a server or a captain, and I had what I thought was a two-top, and one of them doesn't show up, and the remainder party just ends up getting drinks, do you know how mad that I'll get as a server? Because I was expecting 2 people to get full meals, but instead I have one person who just orders drinks, and I might make like $10 in tips. And then this table could have been for another two-top. Second, restaurants do not like or prefer solo diners because each seat, each table is real estate that needs to generate revenue. Solo diners, especially on busy days, we try to push them to the bar because if you put one solo diner on your table, also keep in mind that I didn't mention this earlier, but this person, according to her TikTok, lives in New York City. It seems like a counterintuitive or detrimental strategy to intentionally trick people to solo dine at a table because it doesn't help the server who has to take that table. Also doesn't help the restaurant because you have empty chairs because you have one person instead of 2. So you have real estate that isn't paying. And restaurants do not want any empty chairs. It doesn't make any financial sense. It might have been a catfish. I've heard too many stories to think otherwise. I have never heard this. Who are these people? I've never heard of this happening. It costs too much money. Like, what kind of restaurant has the resources to hire an additional person to go on dating websites? Matching is only the first step. This person would have to match and get the number and get the dates. It doesn't happen that often for this to be a sustainable plan. And to flake on the first date, you're even decreasing the chance of the second date happening. So this is a high improbability that this is a strategy that somebody came up with. Like the idea that this person does a job that this person has to do to trick people to going into the restaurant, put up an ad. Like you could literally just have someone come in and put some TikTok videos for free that could get more customers in than tricking people to go into this restaurant. And the idea that you're putting so much effort to lure in solo diners, you're dealing with a solo diner and you have empty seats all over your restaurant. It doesn't make any financial sense to put this much money and get so little in return. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Okay, so let's take a look at the comments. I feel like the logical thing to do is to hear, I feel like the logical thing to do is to hear is, that's grammatically, I thought I was going crazy, is to name the restaurant. Yeah, you said that this restaurant has done this before. Why don't you tell us the name of the restaurant if it's already known? Let's say this did happen and this restaurant somehow has perfected this system of tricking women to solo dine at the restaurant. Like, I want to meet this person if this was a true story. Like, that's, you know how smart and deceptive this person must be to be able to do this? This person should be some kind of psychologist or something. Like, if this person was able to trick this many women to do this, he could probably find a better job than tricking people to buying a meal for themselves. And again, what is the name of the restaurant? Why won't you tell us the name of the restaurant? If you really are trying to give us a warning for other women out there to not get tricked by this restaurant, why don't you tell us what it is? That would make the perfect logical sense. Otherwise, why are you telling me this cautionary tale? You gotta tell us the restaurant. Yeah, you can't just tell us to be careful about this place and not tell us what the restaurant is. Wow, that's a new low. Hard to believe this is how we treat each other. Yeah, it's hard to believe because it's not true. Don't eat at restaurants I'm stood up at. Got it. Yes! Just doesn't even have to do with being scammed or not. If somebody invites you to go eat at a restaurant and that person doesn't show up, then just go home. Name the restaurant. Yeah, please, name the restaurant. I want to know. I have friends who live in New York City, and I think that they should know too. Keep in mind the OP can't name the restaurant without revealing where she's located. and she might not feel comfy doing that. One, her TikTok videos revolve, if you go to her account, let's go look at it right now. She clearly tells you where she is at, how to make it in Manhattan, story times, blah, blah, blah. She gives her email, like, look, all these things, blah, blah, it's all in New York City. I heart New York. NYC, hashtag NYC, hashtag NYC. Yeah, she not hiding her location. And she also showed her Facebook interactions where she gives away people's first and last names who also support this idea. So she already gave away a lot of information. You could look, I mean, she puts her full name and she's not hiding her location because it's everywhere. Leave on a review in the restaurant's Google reviews. Of course, she won't even tell us the restaurant as if it wasn't bad enough out there. This is not true. Restaurants are struggling right now. They don't need to. This is the idea that people believe that it's even possible. I mean, of course it's possible. We're talking about, is this cost efficient to hire some psychological mastermind to trick so many people to make this even sustainable that would pay for his services to do this? Like, hey, love, I'm a journalist and was hoping to talk to you about this. I'm not a journalist and I want to talk to you about this because I call BS. Huh. There's too many holes in this story. Please name the restaurant again. Like, look at all these comments asking for the restaurant, and she has not responded to any of them. Urban myth. Yeah, exactly. I thought you were gonna say he was a waiter. Now that would be kind of funny. Like he whips out a bunch of flowers while taking the table. You actually deserve the 1 million views. You are the source. Thanks, babe. Look, this is a month after everyone. She decides to respond to this, but not all of this. She decides to respond to that, but not all these comments asking her the location. This is clearly for the likes, for the validation. How come you didn't address any of these older comments from November? Just one, you decide to only comment on the one that talks about how many views you got, but not all the other comments asking you about the restaurant and where this place is. This has happened to so many people. No, it hasn't. This is wild. I mean, wouldn't most people just leave? Yes, most people would leave. Based on my experience and my observation, most people, when they get stood up, they just leave. There's no reason to stay there. You can just go home and order some DoorDash. Like, why would you stay there? Especially when you didn't choose the restaurant. Geez, a lot of gullible people. Let us know the restaurant. Which restaurant? Name them. What is the name of the restaurant? Name of the restaurant. Name the restaurant. No way, name the restaurant. They need to explain themselves. No, they don't, because they don't exist. She needs to explain herself for making up the story. Never heard of that. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, I've never heard of it. And I've been in the industry for over a decade. I love your hair. Did she even watch this video? So anyways, sorry for getting riled up. As a restaurant worker, and in an industry where the restaurant industry is already suffering, like I said, we don't need stories like this to make things even worse, because there are people who actually believe this is true. So anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think I'm going crazy and that this lady is telling the truth? Or do you think that she is lying and she just did this for views? And if you know anything that I don't know, maybe if this story is true, please, I mean, if this restaurant actually exists, please let me know in the comments below. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.